The Office. There was a period in time where The Office felt like it was the biggest show in the history of anything ever. When The Office was on Netflix, and specifically from like 2015 to 2020, the show saw a massive second life and tons of new fans, likely due to a combination of the binge model, The Surface always pushing it, nostalgia, people and kids who never got a chance to watch it finally getting one, and just the show being really, really good.
I need a username. Little Kid Lover. That way people will know exactly where my priorities are at.
The show had been off the air for a few years at that point, yet it had never been more in the zeitgeist. People basically made it a part of their personality. They would quote it in their dating profiles, for gosh sake. This is the time I watched The Office for the first time, and for the second and third and fourth and infinity times, as it became my go-to show and a show I would put on even just for some background noise. I have seen this show countless times, and every time I go through a binge of the show, I pretty much watch every episode, even the Scott's Tots episode and the dreaded season 8. I just love the show that much that I don't mind going back and watching the episodes people don't seem to enjoy. I think they're all pretty good. Well, all of them are good except for one that does not get enough hate, in my opinion. This, of course, being the season 9 episode entitled Customer Loyalty. For a variety of reasons, this is my least favorite episode of the show, which we, of course, will get into why with this video. So let's do it. Here's why Customer Loyalty is the worst episode of The Office. But before we get into this, please like this video, comment, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Every little bit helps. I've also started a new series called Every Disney Parks Movie Reviewed, and I recently put up the first episode with many, many more to come. I am currently working on the Mr. Toad's Wild Ride episode, so if you want to stay up to date on every edition of that series as well as my other videos, please subscribe. Before I get into why this episode sucks, I feel like we should talk about some of the other often hated or maligned episodes of the show. The most famous for its cringe factor episode is probably Scott's Tots, where we see Michael have to go meet the second graders he promised to pay the tuition for if they graduated high school, but now at their high school ages. People tend to hate this episode because you know Michael can't pay for it.
I've made some empty promises in my life, but hands down, that was the most generous.
And essentially, he lied to these kids for 10 years, so you're just waiting for that reveal. Of course, since this is a sitcom, that reveal doesn't happen until the end of the episode, so we get a lot of buildup with the kids singing to him and everything. I get why people find this episode cringy, I really do, but I kind of like it. It's a super sitcom-y plot, and it can feel like it's jumping the shark a little bit, but it's memorable and funny. The whole plot about Michael paying for these kids' tuitions does come from a good place, too. Like, Michael actually thought he would make a ton more money, and he wanted to spend it on these kids.
I fell in love with these kids, and I didn't want to see them fall victim to the system.
And it does get them to stay in school and do well, so it's not all bad. We also get to see more of the Aaron and Michael relationship, which is an underrated later relationship that develops, so it's not all bad. Another much hated episode is the episode where Andy drives across country to get Aaron back from Florida, entitled Get the Girl. First of all, I feel like it's sort of lazy to hate on season 8 because that season had so much going against it with the departure of Steve Carell, so there's already an inherent urge to dislike it as an Office fan, and people do spend so much time hating on it that it's just kind of boring to keep doing that. Also, I just really like the Florida episodes. It's fun to watch these characters in different locations from The Office, and this one is sort of the conclusion of that with Andy grabbing Aaron. The green screen is bad, but I don't know, the set was booked that day or something. The Banker is also an easy one to hate, but it's a clip show and is also inherently easy to hate on. Clip shows were from an era before streaming where people watched everything week to week and didn't mind a reminder episode. So to me, it's just another lazy example to hate on. People tend to hate on the Mafia episode too, but I don't know. I think it's a fun one after the Pam and Jim marriage episode. Seeing The Office kind of devolve shows you how important Jim and Pam are for keeping this already absurd workplace somewhat functional. So there you have it. The Office episodes you think are the worst actually aren't, and you are wrong for it. I'm just kidding. I'm just messing around. Please keep watching the video. Okay, so why do I hate Customer Loyalty? I think for me, it comes down to the main conflict of the episode. The main plot sees Pam fumble a recording of Cece's recital while Jim is away in Philly, while Dwight is desperately trying to show Daryl that Dunder Mifflin is fun and worth staying at. There's sitcom hijinks, and then there's a super serious, tense, unfun relationship drama with Jim and Pam. The whole of the issue in this episode hinges on Jim staying in Philly to meet with an investor, and Pam has to record the recital so Jim doesn't technically miss it. Jim sets up the ensuing conflict when he tells her to be careful about recording with her phone, as apparently she isn't the best at it, and of course, when the recital is occurring, she doesn't record the recital outside of like 10 seconds. I know she gets a call and that this is an older iOS and everything, but like once she gets off the phone, you're really telling me she doesn't realize she needs to press record again? This is a woman who made this animation using like Flash or whatever and used to answer phones for a living. The whole thing just feels forced, and it leads to the worst scene in the history of the show, where Jim and Pam are just yelling at each other, and Jim comes off as kind of abusive, which we know he isn't, or at least we're supposed to think he's not. He's the main character. We're not supposed to think that he's a bad guy.
It's gone. That moment's just gone. I missed it.
I don't know. Jim, maybe you should have been there.
You're not serious, right? I mean, how is that fair?
Then we get greeted by Brian, the boom guy, just comes out of nowhere to comfort Pam. This is when the writers of the last season were thinking about having Pam and Jim separate, and this conflict plus Brian was supposed to be the driving force behind that. But it goes against everything that 8 seasons of this show has told us. Obviously, relationships aren't perfect, but my God, Pam is not terrible at technology, and Jim is not an abusive partner. There's levels of importance here, of course, but the fact that the writers had to write this contrived and out-of-place storyline only to quickly turn their backs on it in later episodes shows you that they know they kind of fucked up. Also, the boom operator's name is Brian Whittle, and he's apparently named after the show's real-life boom operator, who is also named Brian Whittle. In real life, Brian was apparently the boom mic operator during these scenes with fake Brian. And you know that just had to have been super weird for everybody involved. There's just something about the whole episode that just makes me cringe. I remember wanting to hide or curl into a ball the first time I watched Pam answer the call and then forget to record. It was like nails on a chalkboard, and the worst part is it only further sets up more nails on the chalkboard with the Jim and Pam fight. God, I don't know. I just can't watch them fight, especially since you know Pam does know how to operate her phone and the writers were just being lazy. Meanwhile, you have Daryl and Dwight throw a milkshake at a fast food worker only to get one thrown at themselves. You have Aaron and Pete working on something for Nellie, and then there's even a little bit where Toby thinks he's in a relationship with Nellie, and it's just sort of a mess of an episode. You have all of this stuff happening, some comedic, some dramatic, some weird, so the tone just feels all over the place. Earlier seasons of The Office did a good job of employing humor that was grounded and allowed for more quiet, sad moments. There's usually a commentary or some sort of underlying theme, with the show saying something about working in a boring office or waiting for the right partner or just being more lonely in general. One of the saddest moments in the show for me is in season 3 when Jim and Pam accidentally call each other on the phone and they sit there for a while, but because there is a huge disconnect between them at the time, somebody leaving makes it sound like that one of them is trying to get off the phone. That kind of writing, that kind of level of writing wouldn't happen in the later seasons. The later parts of the show, while still funny, were much more zany and flanderized, where characters would drive their cars in the lakes or think the mafia was selling them insurance. They long lost their ability to weave tones throughout an episode by season 9, and that is no more apparent than a customer loyalty.
So what do you think is the worst episode of The Office? Which one makes you cringe? Comment down below, share this video with your friends, like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.